Captain Jake Morrison was halfway through his third coffee when the alarms went off. Setting his mug aside, he turned to face the main display aboard the USS Liberty. 300 gleaming vessels had materialized near Earth, their surfaces catching the light like massive diamonds suspended in the void. "We've got an incoming transmission, sir," Lieutenant Lisa Parker announced. She fought to maintain her composure, though Jake noticed the hint of amusement tugging at her lips. "Let's hear it," Jake replied. The view screen filled with the image of an imposing alien figure. 4 arms extended from its body, purple skin stretched over an elongated frame, and elaborate golden robes draped its form. When it spoke, the voice carried weight and ceremony. "Primitive bipeds of the Third World, we bring you salutations. The Galactic hegemony stands before you, sovereign over 47 stellar domains. Your world shall now embrace our enlightened governance and take its place within our magnificent realm." Jake blinked slowly, then glanced around the bridge. Commander Rick Davis raised an eyebrow. Lieutenant Parker bit down hard on her lower lip. Even Chief Engineer Bob Wilson, normally stone-faced, was grinning and shaking his head. "We appreciate the gesture," Jake said into the comm, "but honestly, we're doing just fine." The alien's quartet of eyes expanded in disbelief. "Explain your meaning of just fine." "What I'm saying is thank you, but we'll pass. Things are working out pretty well for us as is." Silence stretched between them. The creature seemed to be consulting with someone beyond the frame before rotating back toward Jake. "I am Admiral Zexthol, commanding officer of the hegemony." Perhaps our message was unclear. "We extend an opportunity to join our magnificent collective. Protection and wisdom will be yours." "That's generous of you," Jake answered. "But like I mentioned, we're managing perfectly well. Self-protection is something we've gotten decent at." Admiral Zexthol's violet complexion darkened noticeably. 8 centuries of expansion have passed without a single species declining our gracious invitation." "Well then," Jake said with a bright tone, "I guess every streak has to end sometime." The alien's words came faster now. "You fail to grasp what Imperial citizenship provides. Advanced systems, commerce across the stars, and the accumulated knowledge of civilizations older than yours." Jake scratched at his temple. "Listen, Admiral, your empire sounds wonderful and everything, but humans have this concept we're rather attached to. We call it independence." "Independence," the creature repeated, as though the word tasted foul. "Isolation guarantees your destruction. Forces beyond your comprehension threaten all who stand alone." "We've been holding our own so far," Commander Davis interjected. "Between conflicts, plagues, natural catastrophes, and our elected officials, we've faced plenty. If politicians haven't broken us yet, we can probably weather whatever else the universe throws at us." Laughter rippled across the bridge crew. "You jest when confronted with galactic subjugation?" Admiral Zexthol asked, bewildered. "We joke about pretty much everything," Lisa Parker offered. "It's basically our defining trait." Zexthol's features had shifted to near black with fury. "Perhaps a display of our capabilities would clarify matters. Our arsenal includes instruments capable of reducing entire planets to ash." Jake leaned into his seat. "That doesn't sound very neighborly. We've got weapons too, you realize. Ever come across nuclear armaments? Atomic devices represent primitive technology," the alien dismissed with contempt. "Maybe so, but we've stockpiled quite a few. Plus, we operate under something called mutually assured destruction. Basically, if you eliminate us, we eliminate you right back. Everyone loses." The alien stared for an extended moment. "You would embrace annihilation rather than submit to our rule." "We'd rather avoid destroying anyone," Jake clarified. "But submission isn't really in our cultural playbook. We've had some unfortunate experiences with that in the past." Admiral Zexthol clearly struggled to comprehend. "Yet we offer paradise itself, structure, organization, meaning." "We've already got meaning," Jake countered. "We're exploring the cosmos, creating beautiful things, falling in love, and perfecting recipes for zero-gravity pizza. That gives us all the purpose we need." "Pizza?" the alien questioned. "It's food, round and flat with cheese and tomato sauce covering it. Sometimes we add other ingredients. Pretty delicious stuff." The alien delegation erupted into discussion amongst themselves in their native tongue. It resembled a congregation of angry felines in heated debate. Eventually, Admiral Zexthol faced the humans again. Time will be granted for reconsideration, but understand this clearly. The hegemony invariably achieves its objectives. Sounds good, Jake said. Take however long you need. We're not going anywhere. The transmission ended abruptly. Silence settled over the bridge momentarily. Captain, Lieutenant Parker ventured, should we be concerned? Jake looked at each crew member. These people had loved ones waiting back home. They had dreams, aspirations, futures they hoped to see. Probably, he acknowledged, but worrying never solved much of anything. Bob, what's our defensive status looking like? Chief Engineer Wilson flashed a grin. Everything's operational, Captain. Plus, I've got a few surprises those decorated aliens haven't encountered before. Excellent. Rick, establish a link with Earth Command. They'll want to know about our unexpected visitors. Already working on it, sir, Commander Davis confirmed. Jake retrieved his coffee and took another drink. Cold now, but still satisfying. He gazed out at the distant alien armada. Beautiful vessels, he had to concede. Like precious gems scattered against the darkness. Sir, Lisa Parker said softly, do you think they'll actually attack? Jake shrugged casually. They might not. But if they do, they're about to learn something about humanity they clearly don't understand. What would that be, sir? We don't take kindly to bullies, and we really despise being ordered around. The alien formation began withdrawing from Earth's vicinity, establishing position roughly 1,000,000 kilometers distant. Close enough for surveillance, far enough to feel secure? Looks like they're mulling things over, Commander Davis observed. Perfect, Jake said. Gives us time to arrange pizza delivery for the night crew. Something tells me this week is going to drag on. As the USS Liberty maintained its orbital path around Earth, Jake Morrison couldn't suppress a smile. Somewhere out in the black, an alien commander was probably experiencing the absolute worst day of his 800-year career, and the reason was simple. A bunch of humans had just kept being themselves. The stars appeared unchanged from any other night, yet everything had shifted fundamentally. Humanity no longer occupied the universe alone. They had neighbors now, neighbors with impressive fleets and hostile attitudes. But they also possessed something these aliens seemed unable to grasp. They had each other, and sometimes that proved sufficient. 7 days passed without contact from the alien formation. Then a message finally arrived. We require a formal diplomatic assembly, Admiral Zexthol declared on the Liberty's main display. Our most distinguished cultural representative will be dispatched to negotiate your peaceful incorporation into our realm. Captain Jake Morrison nodded. Works for us. Where should we meet? A neutral station will be constructed. Completion will require 3 solar cycles. Jake glanced at Commander Rick Davis, who offered a casual shrug. Fair enough, Jake agreed. 3 days later, the aliens had erected what resembled an enormous crystal palace floating through space. Spectacular and imposing, it sparkled with lights and ornaments like countless diamonds. Vessels moved around it in flawless formation. The human contingent was considerably smaller. Secretary of State Mary Collins headed the group, accompanied by General Pete Rodriguez and Dr. Amy Watson, a xenobiologist. They traveled in a modest shuttle to the meeting station. Upon docking, they encountered hundreds of aliens. Guards wore gleaming armor, musicians held unusual instruments, and officials carried ornate banners. At the center stood Ambassador Kritol, even taller than Admiral Zexthol, draped in jewel-encrusted robes. Welcome to this momentous occasion, Ambassador Kritol intoned in his resonant voice. This day signals your species' entry into the greater cosmic community. Mary Collins smiled cordially. Thanks for having us. You've really outdone yourselves with this place. The aliens guided them through corridors adorned with artwork from numerous worlds. Everything appeared flawless and systematic. Nothing existed out of proper arrangement. They entered an enormous conference chamber with seating for 100 individuals. The aliens had assembled thick volumes of documents, galactic charts, and what appeared to be treaties inscribed in golden ink. Ambassador Kritol gestured toward a mountain of paperwork. This represents our standard integration agreement. 847 pages detail the conditions of hegemony membership. General Rodriguez let out a low whistle. That's considerable documentation, indeed. Sections cover tribute obligations, allegiance declarations, military conscription requirements, and cultural assimilation procedures. Mary Collins reached into her bag and produced a single sheet of paper, placing it on the vast table. "What is this?" Ambassador Crital asked, staring at the minimal document. "Our response," Mary stated. The paper contained one sentence. "Earth declines your generous invitation. Best wishes, humanity." The ambassador lifted the paper, reading it repeatedly. His advisors clustered around him, speaking in hushed tones. "This is not proper diplomatic procedure," Ambassador Crital finally said. "Lengthy negotiations must occur, ceremonial protocols must be observed, gradual integration processes must unfold." "Why?" Dr. Watson asked, taking notes with obvious fascination. Because this is how proceedings have always been conducted." Dr. Watson nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense for your civilization, but we approach things differently." Ambassador Crital seemed confused. "Yet we have brought offerings, advanced systems to share with your underdeveloped world." "What kind of systems?" General Rodriguez inquired. The aliens proudly began their demonstration. They unveiled faster-than-light communication devices capable of transmitting messages across galactic distances instantaneously. They exhibited energy barriers that could shield entire metropolitan areas. They presented food synthesizers that could generate any meal from basic components. The humans observed politely, applauding at appropriate moments. "Very impressive indeed," Mary Collins remarked. "Would you like to see some of our technology?" Dr. Watson produced her phone and displayed it to Ambassador Crital. "This is a communication device. I can contact anyone on Earth instantly. I can also entertain myself with games, order meals, watch films, read literature, and access humanity's entire knowledge base." The ambassador examined the small device with bewilderment. "How do you power such sophisticated technology?" "I plug it into the wall outlet when the battery runs low," Dr. Watson said cheerfully. "Electricity is everywhere." "Power's basically everything." Ambassador Crital looked to his advisors. They appeared equally perplexed. General Rodriguez pulled out his tablet. "We use these for military coordination. Real-time tactical information, satellite imagery, communication with forces anywhere on the planet." "But how do you manufacture such devices?" one of the alien advisors questioned. "Factories. We produce millions of them. Nearly everyone owns one." The aliens spent several minutes examining the human devices, passing them around while conversing in their peculiar language. "This cannot be possible," Ambassador Crital stated. "Such technology demands massive industrial infrastructure and centuries of development." "We've had factories for a couple centuries," Mary Collins said. "Started with textile production, evolved to automobiles, now we manufacture everything." Dr. Watson was studying the alien food synthesizer. "How does this operate?" "It reorganizes matter at the molecular level to generate any desired substance," Ambassador Crital explained with pride. "Fascinating. We have something comparable." Dr. Watson showed them images on her phone. "These are 3D printers. We can fabricate tools, mechanical components, even residential structures. This particular one here prints with chocolate." "Chocolate?" "It's food. Sweet and delicious. We consume it purely for enjoyment." The ambassador appeared increasingly frustrated. "You speak of activities undertaken for enjoyment. What purpose does this serve?" General Rodriguez laughed. "Enjoyment is the purpose. Life's too brief to be serious constantly. But without purpose, how do you sustain order?" "We don't require much order," Mary Collins said. "People generally cooperate naturally." Ambassador Crital was turning a deeper shade of purple. "Impossible. Civilization demands structure, regulations, authority." "We have regulations," General Rodriguez said. "Don't harm others. Don't steal their belongings. Try to be decent." Works reasonably well. Dr. Watson remained fascinated by the alien technology. "Can I ask something? Why do you want to conquer other planets?" "We do not conquer, we liberate. We bring order to chaos." "But what if people are content with their chaos?" Ambassador Crital stared at her. "Content? What does contentment have to do with governance?" The three humans exchanged glances. "Everything," Mary Collins said. "The entire point of government is helping people achieve happiness and freedom." "Freedom," The ambassador spoke the word as though it were toxic. Freedom creates disorder, chaos, misery. Sometimes, General Rodriguez conceded, but it also creates magnificent things. Art, music, exploration, love. These things serve no function, Dr. Watson smiled. They serve the most essential function of all. They make life worth living. The meeting continued for several more hours, but it only grew more confusing for both parties. The aliens couldn't comprehend why humans would choose uncertainty over security. The humans couldn't understand why anyone would sacrifice freedom for order. Eventually, Ambassador Krital concluded the meeting. We require time to consider this. Your species is most unusual. As the humans prepared to depart, Dr. Watson posed one final question. Can I ask what you do for enjoyment in your empire? Ambassador Krital looked puzzled. Enjoyment is unnecessary. We have purpose. But what brings you happiness? The ambassador thought for an extended moment. I do not comprehend the question. As their shuttle returned toward Earth, the three humans sat quietly for a while. That was tragic, Dr. Watson finally said. Yeah, General Rodriguez agreed. 8 centuries of conquest and they've never discovered how to smile. Mary Collins gazed out at the stars. I think we're about to teach them something unexpected. What's that? Dr. Watson asked. That perhaps they're the ones who need liberating. Admiral Zexthal was furious. The diplomatic encounter had been catastrophic. These humans didn't understand their place in the cosmic hierarchy. They needed to witness the true might of the hegemony. Prepare the stellar destroyer, he commanded his crew aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. We shall demonstrate what befalls those who refuse our gracious invitation. The alien fleet moved into position near a small asteroid close to Earth. Roughly the size of a city block, it rotated slowly through space. Admiral Zexthal opened a communication channel to Earth. Humans of the Third World, his voice thundered across space. You have rejected our offer of peace. Now you shall witness the power that has subdued 47 stellar systems. Observe and comprehend your fate should you continue this resistance. Captain Jake Morrison was back on the Liberty's bridge. He watched the alien formation with interest. Looks like they're planning some kind of show. Should we move to a safer position? Lieutenant Lisa Parker asked. No, we're fine here. Let's see what they've got. The alien vessels began to illuminate. Energy flowed between them like lightning, creating patterns of light that were genuinely beautiful to observe. Humans on nearby stations and ships paused their activities to watch. This is actually quite impressive, Commander Rick Davis commented, observing the display. The aliens spent nearly an hour charging their weapon. Energy accumulated across multiple vessels, creating a web of power connecting the entire fleet. The space around them crackled with electricity. Admiral Zexthal's voice returned over the communication system. Witness the stellar destroyer. The same instrument that reduced the Corfac rebellion to dust. The same force that shattered Xerion Prime's defenses. He's really proud of this thing, Jake observed. The weapon discharged. A beam of pure energy, wider than a building and brighter than the sun, struck the asteroid. The rock exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Fragments flew in all directions like fireworks. The alien fleet remained in formation, anticipating the humans' response with terror and capitulation. Instead, Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, sounding impressed but casual. Hey, that was pretty impressive. Want to see something interesting? Before Admiral Zexthal could respond, a small human vessel appeared near another asteroid. It was a weathered mining ship called the Betty Sue, with rust stains and scratched paint. The vessel looked like it had been working in space for 2 decades. This is Captain Roy Tucker of the Betty Sue, a voice drawled with a Texas accent. Y'all want to see what we use for clearing space debris? The mining ship moved close to the asteroid. No grand display of power, no charging sequence, no dramatic buildup. Roy Tucker simply flipped a switch. The asteroid vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there. The alien fleet sat in stunned silence. What? Admiral Zexthal whispered. Captain Morrison's voice returned on the channel. Experimental matter displacement drive. We've been testing it on space junk. Works pretty well for cleaning up our orbital lanes. How is this possible? The Admiral demanded. Oh, it's not that complicated. A new voice joined the conversation.
This is Dr. Sarah Kim. I invented the device.
It uses quantum field manipulation to displace matter into parallel dimensional space. Basically, we just move things somewhere else. Dr. Kim spoke as though explaining how to change a tire. Her voice carried excitement and enthusiasm, the way people sound when discussing their favorite hobby. The tricky part was getting the calculations right, she continued. Took us about 6 months to work out the mathematics. But once we figured out the quantum resonance patterns, it was just a matter of building the right equipment. Admiral Zexthal struggled to process what he'd just witnessed. This is a weapon of unimaginable power. Weapon? Dr. Kim sounded confused. It's not a weapon. It's a garbage disposal system. We got tired of space junk cluttering up our satellites. But the military applications, I suppose you could use it as a weapon, Dr. Kim said thoughtfully. But that would be kind of wasteful. It's much better for cleaning things up. Captain Roy Tucker's voice returned on the line. Hell, we use smaller versions of these back home for clearing tree stumps. Real handy for construction work. The alien leadership was having an emergency meeting on their flagship. Admiral Zexthal could hear them arguing in the background. You have tree stumps? One of the aliens asked weakly. Sure do. Big old things, hard to dig out with regular equipment. Sarah's machine makes it easy. Just point and click and they're gone. Dr. Kim was getting more excited. We're working on a bigger version for asteroid mining. Should be able to move entire mountains if we get the power requirements right. Mountains? Admiral Zexthal asked. Well, small mountains. Maybe large hills. We want to terraform Mars, and it would be easier if we could move some of the rock around. Lieutenant Parker was monitoring the alien fleet through the Liberty's sensors. Sir, I think they're having some kind of breakdown over there. Jake examined the readings. Several alien ships were moving erratically and their communication channels were filled with panicked chatter. Admiral, Jake said, are you okay over there? A long pause preceded Zexthal's answer. How long have you possessed this technology? About 8 months, Dr. Kim replied. We finished the first working prototype last winter. Been testing it on space debris ever since. And you use it for garbage disposal and construction and mining. Roy's been using it to help build the new Mars colony ships. Mars colony? Captain Morrison chuckled. Oh yeah, we're planning to move about 50,000 people to Mars next year. Should be exciting. You are colonizing other worlds. Just the one for now. Well, we've got some research stations on Europa and Titan, but Mars is the first real colony. The alien fleet was definitely experiencing some kind of crisis. Ships were breaking formation, and their communication channels sounded like numerous people having nervous breakdowns. Sir, Commander Davis said quietly, I think we broke them. Seems that way, Jake replied. Dr. Kim, maybe ease up on the technical details a bit. I think they're having trouble keeping up. Oh, sorry, Dr. Kim said. I get excited when I talk about quantum mechanics. Most people find it boring. Most people don't have your brain, Captain Tucker laughed. Hell, I still don't understand how that thing works, and I've been using it for months. Admiral Zexthal's voice came back on the communication channel, sounding strained. We need to discuss this development with our superiors. The fleet will withdraw to consider these new circumstances. Sure thing, Jake said. Take all the time you need. We'll be here. As the alien fleet began moving away from Earth, the humans watched with amusement. Think they'll be back? Lisa Parker asked. Oh, they'll be back, Jake said. But I think next time they might be a little more polite. Dr. Kim was still on the communication channel talking to Captain Tucker about improvements to the displacement drive. Their casual discussion of moving mountains and reshaping planets was probably giving the aliens nightmares. You know what the funny part is? Commander Davis said. What's that? They spent an hour charging up their superweapon to blow up one little asteroid. Roy did the same thing in about 3 seconds, and he was just cleaning up space junk. Jake laughed. I think they're starting to realize they might have picked the wrong species to mess with. In the distance, the alien fleet was retreating to what they probably thought was a safe distance. But after watching humans casually make asteroids disappear, Admiral Zexthal was probably wondering if anywhere in the galaxy was safe anymore. Director Velmoth arrived at Earth 2 weeks later with the biggest pile of paperwork the galaxy had ever witnessed. His ship was filled with clerks, accountants, and form processing specialists. If the hegemony couldn't convince humans through force or diplomacy, Perhaps they could be overwhelmed through proper bureaucracy. Humans of Earth? Director Velmoth announced over the communication channels. I am the Chief Administrative Officer of the Galactic Hegemony. I have come to explain the practical benefits of Imperial membership. Captain Jake Morrison was growing weary of alien visitors, but he remained courteous. Sure thing. What can we do for you? I will present a comprehensive analysis of Imperial services. Please dispatch your financial and administrative officials to my vessel. The human response team was led by Karen Brown from the Department of State and Dan Miller from the Treasury Department. They brought coffee and sandwiches, anticipating a lengthy meeting. Director Velmoth met them in a conference room that looked like a library had exploded. Papers covered every surface. Charts hung from the walls. Filing cabinets lined the corridors. The alien wore thick glasses and carried 3 different clipboards. Welcome to the presentation, Director Velmoth said, adjusting his glasses. First, let me explain our healthcare system. He unrolled a chart 20 feet long, covered in tiny writing. Imperial healthcare covers all citizens across 47 stellar systems. We have standardized medical procedures, approved treatment protocols, and efficient resource allocation. Karen Brown looked at the chart and took a sip of her coffee. That's impressive. What about pre-existing conditions? Pre-existing conditions require Form 847B submitted in triplicate with a waiting period of 6 to 18 months for approval. 6 to 18 months? Yes, the forms must be reviewed by the Medical Assessment Board, then forwarded to the Planetary Health Council, then approved by the Imperial Medical Authority. Karen nodded. We implemented universal healthcare on Earth about 30 years ago. Free at the point of service. No forms required. Director Velmoth blinked. Free? How do you manage resource allocation without proper documentation? Doctors treat sick people. We pay for it with taxes. Works pretty well. The alien made notes on his clipboard. But who determines treatment priorities? The doctors and patients, mostly. Without administrative oversight? We trust our doctors to know what they're doing. Director Velmoth looked horrified. Trust without forms. Dan Miller was examining another chart about Imperial currency. Tell me about this standardized credit system. Director Velmoth brightened. This was clearly his favorite topic. The Imperial credit is based on energy output calculations multiplied by resource, availability coefficients adjusted for planetary, production indices and trade balance, fluctuations. He showed them a formula that occupied an entire wall. Every transaction requires verification through the Central Banking Authority with exchange rate, calculations updated daily, based on Imperial economic indicators. Dan pulled out his phone and showed them an app. We have 17 different digital currencies on Earth. This one here tracks the value of cute cat pictures. It's worth about $40 billion right now. Cat pictures? Yeah, people really like cats. We also have traditional money, digital assets, and something called meme stocks. Meme stocks. Stocks that people buy because they think they're funny. Sometimes they make people rich, sometimes they don't. It's kind of like gambling, but with more jokes. Director Velmoth was writing frantically on his clipboard. How do you maintain economic stability without centralized control? We don't really, Dan admitted. The market goes up and down. People make money, people lose money, but somehow it all works out in the end? That sounds terrifying. It keeps things interesting. The presentation continued with education. Director Velmoth explained the Imperial learning system, where all knowledge was standardized and approved by the Educational Council. Students learned identical lessons across all worlds, ensuring consistency and order. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's Education Secretary, had joined the meeting by video call. That sounds very organized. How do you handle creativity and innovation? Creativity is managed through approved channels. Innovation requires authorization from the Research and Development Board. What if someone has a new idea? They submit Form 342C with supporting documentation. If approved, they may proceed with supervised experimentation. Dr. Green laughed. Our kids learn everything from ancient history to quantum physics. Then they go out and invent things we never thought of. Last month, a 12-year-old built a working fusion reactor for her science fair project. A 12-year-old. Yeah, she got the idea from watching online videos. All our educational content is free on the internet. Director Velmoth was starting to look overwhelmed. Free? How do you control information distribution? We don't. Anyone can learn anything they want, but chaos, disorder. People might learn things they are not supposed to know. Like what? Karen Brown asked. Like how to think for themselves. The humans looked at each other. That's kind of the point, Dan Miller said gently. The final part of the presentation covered government structure. Director Velmuth explained the imperial hierarchy with the emperor at the top, followed by regional governors, system administrators, planetary directors, and local supervisors. Every decision flows through proper channels, he said proudly. Orders come from above. Reports go upward. Perfect organization. Who's your emperor? Karen asked. His Supreme Excellence Korvac the Eternal, ruler of all known space, commander of infinite fleets, master of 1,000 worlds. Sounds impressive. How did he get the job? He inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his father, who conquered the original 12 systems 800 years ago. What if people don't like him? Director Velmuth looked confused. Not like the Emperor? That is impossible. He is the Emperor. But what if he makes bad decisions? The Emperor does not make bad decisions. He is the Emperor. Karen tried a different approach. What if the people want someone else to be in charge? The people do not choose their leaders. Leaders are born to rule. Dan Miller shook his head. We tried that system once. Didn't work out so well. So we got rid of our king and started electing our leaders. Electing? People vote for who they want to be in charge. If the leader does a bad job, we vote for someone else next time. Director Velmuth dropped his clipboard. The people choose their own rulers? Every few years. It's called democracy. But who tells them who to choose? Nobody. They decide for themselves. The alien sat down heavily in his chair. His face had gone pale green. This is madness. Pure chaos. How does anything get done? We argue a lot, Karen admitted. But somehow we muddle through. Arguing about government policy in public? Sure, it's called debate. Sometimes it gets pretty heated, but that's how we figure out the best solutions. Director Velmuth was hyperventilating. Citizens arguing with their government? Citizens are the government, Dan explained. We elect representatives to speak for us, but they work for us, not the other way around. The alien made a strange, choking sound. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. Really? Dr. Green asked over the video call. We think it's pretty normal. Normal? People governing themselves is normal? Well, yeah. How else would you do it? Director Velmuth stared at the humans for a long moment. Then he began gathering his papers with shaking hands. I need to report back to my superiors immediately, he said. This situation is far worse than we thought. Worse? Karen asked. What's wrong with democracy? Everything, the alien cried. You have no emperor, no central authority, no proper forms. How do you maintain order? We don't need much order, Dan said. People are pretty good at taking care of themselves. Impossible. Without strong leadership, there can only be chaos and suffering. Actually, we're pretty happy, Karen said. Free health care, good education, and we get to choose our own leaders. What more could you want? Director Velmuth clutched his papers to his chest. I must leave immediately. This planet is too dangerous. As the alien official fled back to his ship, the humans sat in the conference room finishing their sandwiches. That went well, Dan said. I think we scared him, Karen replied. Yeah, well, Dr. Green said from the video screen. Freedom tends to have that effect on people who've never experienced it. Outside, Director Velmuth's ship was already preparing to leave. The alien was probably filing an emergency report about a world where people thought for themselves and chose their own destiny. On Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work, kids went to school, and politicians argued about the best way to help everyone. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating, but it was theirs. The galactic hegemony was falling apart. Admiral Zexthal sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Dominion, staring at reports that made no sense. Director Velmuth had locked himself in his quarters and refused to come out. Ambassador Kretol was asking strange questions about something called comedy. Sir, his aide reported, we're receiving requests from 17 different ships asking for permission to defect to the humans. Defect? Admiral Zexthal's 4 eyes widened. That's impossible. No one defects from the hegemony. They're saying they want to learn about democracy and freedom, sir. Admiral Zexthal rubbed his temples. In 8 centuries of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. They had come to conquer a primitive world, and instead found a civilization that seemed to do everything better than they did. A message came through from Earth. It was Captain Jake Morrison. Admiral, we've been thinking. Would you like to send a small group to visit Earth for a few days? Maybe we can understand each other better. Admiral Zexthal was desperate. Yes, we accept your invitation. 3 days later, a small shuttle carrying Ambassador Kratal, Director Velmuth, and 2 guards landed at a place called New York City. They were met by Dr. Amy Watson, who had volunteered to be their guide. "Welcome to Earth," Dr. Watson said cheerfully. "Ready for the tour?" The aliens stepped out of their shuttle and immediately froze. The city was enormous, filled with noise and movement and chaos. Humans were everywhere, walking fast, talking loud, and going in all directions at once. "Where are the guards?" Director Velmuth asked, nervously. "Where are the order keepers?" "Those are police officers over there." Dr. Watson pointed to 2 humans in blue uniforms who were helping an elderly lady cross the street. But mostly people just get along on their own. They walked through the streets, and the aliens saw things that confused them. Humans were playing music on corners just for fun. Children were laughing and running around without supervision. People were arguing about politics, but nobody was getting arrested. "This is chaos," Ambassador Kratal whispered. "This is Tuesday," Dr. Watson replied. She took them to a place called Central Park, where humans were lying on the grass, playing games, and feeding birds. Families were having picnics. Couples were holding hands. An elderly man was teaching a young boy how to fly a kite. "What is the purpose of this?" Director Velmuth asked. "Fun," Dr. Watson said. "Relaxation, spending time with people you care about." "But they're not producing anything. They're not serving the state. They're being happy." "That's more important than serving the state." The aliens watched a group of teenagers playing something called basketball. They were laughing and cheering and having a great time. "These young humans," Ambassador Kratal observed, "they compete against each other, but they are not angry when they lose." "It's just a game," Dr. Watson explained. "The point is to have fun and get exercise. They play for no reward. The reward is fun." That evening, Dr. Watson took them to something called a comedy club. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Humans sat in a dark room while one human stood on a stage and talked about everyday life in a way that made everyone laugh. The comedian was talking about the differences between men and women, about the problems of modern technology, about the strange things politicians said. The audience was laughing so hard that some of them were crying. Ambassador Kratal was fascinated. "This human makes others happy by pointing out the absurdities of existence." "Pretty much," Dr. Watson said. "And people pay to watch this?" "Sure. Laughter makes people feel good." Director Velmuth was having trouble processing this information. "But what does this accomplish? What is the productive value?" "It makes people happy," Dr. Watson repeated. "Happy people are healthier, more creative, and nicer to each other. What more do you need?" After the show, they walked through the city at night. The aliens saw humans helping each other without being ordered to do so. They saw people sharing food with strangers. They saw volunteers working at a homeless shelter giving their time for free. "These humans help each other without being commanded," Ambassador Kratal noted. "We call it charity," Dr. Watson said. "People help because they want to help. Without reward? Without punishment for not helping? Most people like helping others. It makes them feel good about themselves." Director Velmuth sat down on a park bench. "I don't understand any of this. In the hegemony, people do their jobs because they are told to do their jobs. They follow orders because orders must be followed. But here, people do things because they choose to do them," Dr. Watson finished. "How do you maintain order? We don't need much order. Most people want the same things: safety, food, shelter, love, and the chance to be happy. When people have those things, they usually behave pretty well." The next day, they visited a school. The aliens watched human children learning about science, history, and art. The children asked questions, argued with their teachers, and came up with ideas of their own. The young humans challenge their instructors, Ambassador Kretal observed. That's how they learn, the teacher explained. Questions are good. Thinking for yourself is good. But what if they ask questions that have no answers? Then they try to find the answers themselves. That's how we discover new things. Director Velmuth was watching a group of children working on an art project. What is the purpose of this activity? They're being creative. Art helps people express themselves, but it serves no function, the teacher smiled. It serves the most important function of all. It helps them become human. On their final day, the aliens attended a town hall meeting where humans were discussing local issues. People stood up and spoke their minds. They disagreed with each other, sometimes loudly, but they listened to different opinions and tried to find solutions that worked for everyone. This is your government? Ambassador Kretal asked. Part of it, Dr. Watson replied. Democracy is messy, but it's ours. No one person makes all the decisions. No one person is smart enough to make all the decisions. After 3 days on Earth, the aliens were ready to return to their ship. But something had changed in them. They had seen humans living without fear, thinking for themselves, and choosing their own paths through life. As they prepared to leave, Director Velmuth made an announcement. I wish to remain on Earth, he said quietly. What? Admiral Zexthol's voice crackled over the communication system. I want to learn about this democracy. I want to understand how people can govern themselves. Ambassador Kretal nodded. I also wish to stay. I want to study this thing called humor. You cannot be serious, Admiral Zexthol said. Actually, Ambassador Kretal replied, I think I'm learning to be the opposite of serious. Within a week, half the alien fleet had requested permission to visit Earth. Within a month, ships were arriving from across the galaxy as news spread about a world where people were free to be themselves. Captain Jake Morrison found himself setting up an immigration office to handle all the requests for asylum. Aliens from dozens of worlds were asking to become human, not because they wanted Earth's technology or resources, but because they wanted something they had never experienced, freedom. Admiral Zexthol was the last to make the request. He transmitted a simple message to Earth. I have served an empire for 300 years. I would like to learn what it means to serve myself. The galactic hegemony didn't fall because of war or rebellion. It fell because its citizens discovered there was a better way to live. They learned that happiness was more important than order, that freedom was more valuable than security, and that laughter was the most powerful force in the universe. And it all happened because humanity couldn't stop being human, even when faced with the might of a galactic empire. As Dr. Watson often told the refugees who arrived seeking freedom, welcome to Earth. Try the pizza, learn to laugh, and remember that the best government is the one that trusts its people to govern themselves. The galaxy was never the same.